Logging is when a truck driver says whether they're driving, whether they're in the sleeper cab, whether they're off duty, or whether they're on duty doing something other than driving. And the reason it's important is that a truck driver can legally work a 14-hour shift and drive. The basic rules, they can work a 14-hour shift and drive for up to 11 of those 14 hours. And in an 8-day work week, they can work up to 70 hours. And after that, they have to stop driving. And you would think that's a lot of hours, 70-hour work weeks, 14-hour work days. But because truckers are typically paid by the mile, and they have a lot of time where they get stuck at shippers, they get stuck doing things where they either can't make the delivery, and more importantly, they can't make a living because they only end up with 2 or 3 hours illegal driving time because they get stuck so many places, that they would cheat. They used to have paper logs that would keep track of all on paper, and they would cheat, and they would say they were sleeping when they were driving, or sleeping when they were, doing, or driving when they're not driving. They did all kinds of crazy stuff, and we'd catch them. It'd be really easy to catch them. It was a lot of fun, but it was such a safety issue that starting in 2017, the government requires all 18-wheelers to have what they call electronic logs. The way electronic log is if you're driving, the computer will automatically record that the vehicle is driving. So the driver should no longer, in theory, be able to say, I'm in the sleeper cab or I'm off duty when I'm really driving. And so, the thought was, well, this is going to end all these issues. But in doing all my research for the book, I found a bunch of ways that truck drivers can cheat and still work more hours than legally allowed, and hide that from the government, from us, and sometimes from the employer. Sometimes the employer has to be in on it.
So I guess I have 2 questions. One, why is there such a culture within the trucking industry of trying to cheat on logs? I mean, why is that such a big issue that they had to mandate electronic logs to prevent people from cheating?
Yeah, because they really put, the truck driver is viewed as a freedom thing. Who are they to tell me when I can work, when I can't? I know my own body. But it's really the mistreatment of truck drivers by the trucking industry. Because they're paid by the mile, and they're not paid for all the time. I read a study by the American Transportation Research Institute that when they go to pick up or deliver a load, on average, they're stuck 3 to 4 hours. They can be stuck as much as 8 hours. So that's 8 hours, 3 to 8 hours of on-duty time, eating against your 14-hour day, eating against your 70-hour work week, but you don't get paid for it. All the time they spend doing paperwork, what they have to go get the vehicle fixed, when they have to do inspections. They don't get paid for any of that time. When they're stuck in traffic, what they're making per hour goes way down because they're going slower and they're getting paid by the mile. So it is a really unfair system for truck drivers. And the only way they can make a decent living, despite all the hours they're working, is to cheat and work more hours than legally allowed. It is a sad state of affairs. If they would pay them by the hour or pay them a salary, which is something the government encourages but doesn't require, but hardly anyone does, that would change everything. But right now, they're under pressure to deliver on time. They're only paid when they're driving, and that puts pressure on them to drive when they're not legally allowed to drive, and when it's not safe to drive because they haven't had enough rest.
So I've done a ton of trucking cases. I've never come across a long-haul trucking company that paid its drivers by the hour or a salary or anything like that. It's always by the mile. And the only time I ever see it, paid by the hour or a salary are usually sort of local truck drivers, at least in my experience.
I think I've only seen 1 or 2 that don't pay by the mile in the long haul. It's very rare.
Yeah.
Because it's better for the trucking company. And look, the trucking company would rather, from an economic point, if the driver can only drive that truck 2 or 3 hours that day, that's only 2 or 3 hours of income because the trucking company is getting paid by the load. They're not getting paid by the hour. And so, economically, they would rather have that driver have an incentive to cheat. And a lot of this, it's not just drivers doing it, it's dispatchers know it, dispatchers are pushing it. And if we go into how they cheat on the electronic logs, it's very easy for a trucking company that wants to catch them to catch them. but they have to care about it and not look the other way. And unfortunately, the stories I've heard from truckers are that they're being encouraged to cheat because the trucking company wants to get the load there on time.